Okay, 23. Looks like this. The given data represents fossil fuel carbon dioxide emissions, so CO2, um, in thousands of metric tons of the top 10 emitters in 2007. So this is, oops, uh, sorry, carbon dioxide emissions for the top 10 in 2007. All right, so A says determine the average carbon dioxide emissions of the top 10 countries. All right, so let's go ahead and find the average of this. I certainly don't want to just put these in and add them up and divide by 10. Although I can, I'm going to let my calculator do that work for me because I also read ahead a little bit in the problem to see I'm going to have to be doing some other things, dividing by population size and things like that. And so I want to make sure that I'm not repeating my work over and over again. So I'm going to go ahead and put this data in my list so that I can work with it over and over again. So I'm going to put it in my list. I'm going to pause it and put this data in my list. No need for you to watch me do that. Okay, I put the list in and it's all in there. And when you put these big numbers in, more than 6 digits, it goes to scientific notation. Now up here, just so you know, 1.78 e to the 6, that means times 10 to the 6, so it moves the decimal over 6 places. But if you look down here, this is the whole number, so just know that it's just rewriting it up there so it fits in the window, but this is the actual data that it has. So A says to find the average here, so I'm going to find the average for this value, so I'm going to go stat, calc, one variable stat, so enter, and it's asking for L1, which my data is in L1. Oops. Calculate. So X bar is 536,236. 7, if I round to the nearest whole, metric ton or thousands of metric tons. Holy cow. So it's this many thousand. It's important that you get the units right. 1,000 metric tons of CO2. Okay. So that's the average. Okay. So that's the average metric ton. So there we go there. Oops. Got you off the screen there. Let me make it a little bit smaller. Okay. Explain why the total emissions of a country is likely to not the best gauge of CO2 emissions. Instead, the emissions per person, I'm reading down here, total emissions divided by population size is a better gauge. Well, they answered the questions. They answered the question part, the first part, in the second part. Why is this not a good measure? Well, because China has a ridiculous amount more people than what's the smallest one here? I guess it is decreasing than Iran. So you can't compare. You say, hey, Iran's barely polluting. Well, not necessarily. China just has 10 times more people than Iran. So let's do like they said. Let's look at emissions per capita. Okay, total emissions divided by population size, which is what they already did right here. Okay, so let's look at that. Determine the average and median per capita. So let's just look at these numbers first of all. So per person, they're 1.35 metric tons per person is what it equates to. Whereas this is 5, this is 0.3, 2.9, 2.7, all the way down. Okay, so now you can see, hey, the United States is actually putting out more carbon dioxide per person compared to everybody else. Canada would be second, and so forth. Okay. C. Determine the mean and median per capita emissions of the top 10. Which measure would environmentalists be likely to do? So we're going to put this data in L2 and find the mean and median for that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. 1.35, 5.2, pause it here. Okay, here we go. I got it now in L2. So now we're going to look at the stat calc, one variable stat. Now I have to tell it L2, and L2 is right here. So I'm going to go to second, L2, and then down to calculate. And now I've got the mean is 2.69. So the mean is 2.69. And if I scroll down, the median is 2.66. Okay, 2.69 and 2.66. See. .66. Now this is space here. This is the per capita, distinguishing it from the first calculation. This is thousands, or let's do emissions per person. Okay. All right. So now we got the mean and median per person from our list here. Now, which measure would an environmentalist likely use to support the position that per capita emissions are too high? Well, if I'm interested in per capita positions, of course I'm going to use this data right here because that's the per capita numbers. What if I'm trying to look at and say which country is has their carbon dioxide emissions are too high? You're just producing too much. Could I use this argument here that, hey, China really isn't producing that much pollution? It's only 1.35 per person. Is that a good measure? Or can I go over here and say, wow, look at how much they are producing? See, these are things that you could argue and say, one group might say, no, they are crazy polluting the earth. Another might say, yeah, but look, per person, it's not really that big a deal. So, but the United States, on the other hand, so see, these are things that you have to think about when you're looking at data and know what people are trying to say. All right, there you go on that one.